All
There you
right.
go.
So anyway, on so Friday, so I was talking about this self-judgment that was coming through. Um and it was up and down and all around last week. It was like 1 minute it was so intense, and then the next minute everything was fine, and then 3 hours later it was intense again. And
Yep.
such a feeling of being I don't want to say lost because it's not the right word, but just totally nowhere. Being
Right.
nowhere.
Yeah.
Feeling like I was nowhere.
And it's not lost, but it's like disorientation to the point of distraction.
Right.
And I
And
know everything that I went through because with Frank being gone for so long, it's like I've changed in ways that I really don't even know. So when we do spend time together, it's a little stressful. And then I find myself, part of me being pulled back to the way I used to be, and part of me going, oh God, no, you work so hard to not do that anymore.
yeah.
And then I get scared. Oh, well, what do I do when he comes back?
Right.
And it's like,
Well, there's nothing to be scared about. It's just you have to be who you are,
right,
and
right.
he has to accept that or not.
Well, and he's not the one that's having the problem. It's me.
Hmm.
So then that turns that self-judgment on to
Right.
get to the place of, it's like, and I can't even do that for myself. So how could I ever do it for somebody else?
Well, you shouldn't do anything for anybody else. It should all be for yourself.
That's true. That's
That's
true. Well, then more judgment. So why can I not do that?
yeah,
So I'm wondering if part of that's the hives.
could be. Well, and everything is on edge for you, right? So everything is on edge for you right now.
Right.
There's all this stuff going on, and there's that self-judgment, and then there's this, like there's so much friction
Well,
underneath the surface that I could see that contributing to hives for sure. Hmm.
and then when I was up in Oklahoma on Friday, everybody was at work, and I was like working on my website, and I went in and edited a photo just like I always do, and I went to upload it to my website into WordPress to put as a header. It won't load. So I'm just sitting here going, I was guided. I went with guidance on everything that I edited on because I added text onto the photo.
Mm-hmm.
So it was all guidance, and it won't load. And I've done this hundreds of times. So I'm like, what's blocking me? Is it me blocking me? Well, of course it is, because everything's me.
Right.
So and then that again feeds the judgment.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, yeah, for me, the judgment had to do with, and actually it's really interesting because there's been a lot. It's funny because I gave myself the space over the weekend to just not judge and to just be present and accept everything for how it is, right? And
Right.
this morning, waking up, being focused again, in this arena, it felt really clear that, because I even said this Friday night at our Trinity share, which was, I forgot what I was going to say. I know that I'm at the point of not needing to see everything, right? And I
Right.
think that's the discombobulation sometimes, is so much is just plowing through so that we get to that finish line of what's next, right? Or what this next phase is, that it's discombobulating because it feels like you're upended in a wave, right? And so sometimes it's icky and it feels icky and crappy because it's moving through so fast.
Right.
And then the ego wants to just grasp onto something,
Anything. Yeah.
yeah, to get a reference, right? To give a reference to and a projection to, and
Yeah.
and so
Get
that's,
your bearing.
yeah, and that's what I kept on sort of perceiving last week and saying, okay, I'm going to just let this flow, which I did, right? And yeah, and some days, so for like a couple hours at a time, I might feel really crappy. But I was aware of the importance of staying in observance to it and not getting swept up by it, even though it was challenging. And in moments it got a little bit unnerving,
Right.
you know? So, and I was like, okay. And I, I'd feel great in meditation, and then I'd come out and I'd feel crappy again. And, I'd see all this stuff, and yeah, there was just stuff. And then, so Friday night we were talking about that, and I said, and then there's this other part of me in these other moments that's just like, I am just ready to pack a bag and just travel wherever the hell I feel like it. Like, I am just ready to go.
Yep.
Right. Oh, look, there, a little siren just came by. There you go. So it's like this. It's like there's this big dying away of who I used to be. A huge dying away of it.
Which probably comes back to that thing I was talking about before we got on, is that need to shed that mother role.
Right.
Because it's like, it's almost like I feel it's prohibitory to where I need to be.
It's a distraction, and it's a very convenient distraction for us. In fact, it was funny because what I was actually, that was where I was getting to begin with. So what happened was, I think it was Friday, it was either Thursday or Friday. I can't remember which day, but it was, and I think I texted you with this. It was like, and I'm like, okay, I can tell I'm really avoiding looking at something because I was like, oh, let me help Brianna rewrite her resume, like now that she's graduating college. So I did that. Looks great. And it looked great. And then I was like, oh, well, let me look at, I don't know how I got into Indeed, but then I was looking for something that Brianna had talked about. And then I was like, oh, and then I was looking at something that Scott and I had talked about. And then I was like, oh, well, let me see what kind of sustainability jobs are just out there and see, do broad scale across the country. Found like first then it was within his company, and then it was like across the country. And so then I sent him like 4 emails, bing, 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 right? And we were laughing about this. We were talking about it Friday night. I said, and it like took up half of my day doing all this stuff, right? And in the last email I sent to Scott, I said, I am so obviously avoiding looking at something. So I'm glad to be at least of help to somebody else.
Right.
And then it was even funny because then later on that night, it was Thursday night, because later on that night he was working on, because he's working on his, thesis, capstone, whatever. And he had to hand in a list of resources, right? And because now he's in this class to focus on getting it completed. So I was really excited. But anyway, so he had to hand in his resources, and he was like, well, where did I find, da, da, da. And like, this was my life in corporate, right? It's like, I know resources. That's how I'm really good at digging stuff up. That's market research, all that kind of stuff. So I just like pick up my phone. He doesn't even know I'm looking at it, right? This is just like, and I find him like 10 resources for like what he's writing his paper on. And he just looks at me and he goes, boy, you're on fire today. I said, told you I'm avoiding something.
That's right. That's exactly right.
You know what the ego says? I know this. And this
right.
is
I got this easy.
Yeah, this is easy. Just stay with this right now. Like, distract yourself.
Yeah.
And I was like, at least it's productive in some way for somebody. I said, but it's all for somebody else, because, and that's the whole thing, is I was thinking, God, yeah, because actually being married is a role, right? And it's a distraction.
And being a mother. Yeah.
And being a mother.
And we've done it so many times. And so we're so well practiced in it that we think it's easy.
Yeah. Being a mother, and even, being a father too, same thing.
Right.
Being tending the caretaker child too. That's a big one that's come up across our generation, in the recent years too.
Right.
You had that you don't have anymore.
Right.
And so I think part of it is for us to, it's our job. It's like, it's not shedding the role. It's shedding our own expectations of what that means for us to be in that role.
Right. Well, and I've, based on conversations we've had in the shares and then texts and whatever, is I've gotten to where I've lost the word expectation and substituted creation. And boy, does that really make a difference, because it is no different.
No,
An expectation is what you're projecting to create.
Exactly. Right.
So that really, you know,
it does,
that's what are and everything else.
It's really funny because there are so many people that I know, and I was reflecting on this. There's some things that I've seen over the weekend, just in observance, on how much someone puts a value on themselves by whether or not their adult child is talking to them, or, doing something for them, or their grandchildren are doing something for them. And I'm just like, it doesn't make you any more or less valuable, because that's just outdated roles and expectations.
Right.
So if we still hinge our, relationships, if we still hinge our value on our external relationships, which is what we still do, and that's how we get hidden in the roles, right? So whether it's mother, or like I said, mother, spouse, grandmother, grandfather, father, child,
or, even as unemotional as employee, breadwinner.
Yeah. Well, and so all this stuff, and I'm like, well, and that's what I've been, and I was really, it was really clear to me. I was like, well, all of this is a convenient distraction, which, and it wasn't a bad one, because I knew I was plowing through something, and to keep me going, I guess that's what I had to do. Like, looking back at that, even though I was frustrated and judgmental to myself about why am I doing this instead of what I should be doing, as though I work and, and whatever. It was like, And then I had another thing over the course of the week, which was really interesting, where I had the week before, I had several people that were like, oh, I really want to do a session. Can you do a session next week? And I had said no, because I blocked the week off because I had jury duty. And I didn't know whether I was going to be a day or the whole week or whatever. So I said, oh, let me get back to you like Monday or Tuesday, because that's when I'll know. And it'll probably be later on the week. And when I did that, because I got done Tuesday, when I did that, it was like none of them would get back to me. And then one got back to me, and it was almost like the way she was acting was like I was soliciting a session from her instead of me getting back to her about her wanting a session. And it was just so weird. And I was like, well, that's really odd. Right. And then the third one, a second one didn't respond until like Friday afternoon. So it's for this week now. Right. Which is fine. And the third one never responded. And then, so here's the thing. So I was like, oh, that's so weird. Right. And it's like, well, there's something about the energy of, I need you right this moment. Right. And that's the parental thing. Right. That's the parental energy. Yeah. No, I need you to drop everything. And even if it's inconvenient to you, blah, blah, blah. So it was interesting, because I didn't really see that fully until Saturday. I got a PM from somebody who I hadn't heard from in ages, and was like, I am lost. I really need to talk to you. I'll pay for a session. It's, not a problem, blah, blah, blah. And so I was in the middle, like I had a really full weekend, right? So I didn't see it until a couple hours later anyway. And then I responded and I said, I would love to talk to you. It's been such a long while, blah, blah, blah. I could talk, did you need to talk to me right now? We could talk tomorrow night, meaning Sunday night. I was like, like 8 or 8:30. I said, or we could do something during the week. So I have a really full weekend. So I'll be glad to talk to you tomorrow night. And here's, how you can blah. And they came back and they're like, okay, thanks. And then that was it. And it was really interesting, because I was like, okay. But the funny thing was, that didn't bother me, because had given myself that, first of all, we did the share, and I'll get to that, what we ended up talking about and doing, and what I saw out there, because it was really powerful. And then I gave myself that weekend of like a lot of intense working out because of Kung Fu, and then working on the deck, and, family time. And what I could see though Sunday night was, you have changed. You don't need to be in that role anymore. You don't need to be the one that everybody needs to pull at the last minute just because they have an emergency they have to deal with. And you not being in that role takes you out of their reality. Like, in this way, like, and there's nothing to judge. There's nothing to be upset about or whatever. It's accepting yourself in that it's accepting yourself and not being in that role anymore, because it frees you up then to be something else. Right. But it's us having to actually practice it, which I was really strongly guided in all those circumstances. My guidance was they can wait.
Well, right.
And I even asked about the one who contacted me over the weekend, and I was like, yep, they can wait. And then like in looking at that, I was like, oh, it's interesting, because it really is the energy of, no, I need to talk to you right now. I need to talk to you right now, because they don't want to deal with it themselves, right? And it's like, no, that's not your role. That's ultimately not your role. So, so it's not a bad thing to be unavailable in a moment, like, because the mind and the ego wants to say, oh, well, that's a loss of revenue and da-da-da. But that's becoming a slave to the 3D, right? And knowing that you can't free yourself up for it to be easier, for that revenue to be easier, to just be there, instead of you having to tie yourself to those expectations and creations, as you want to talk about it. I'm going to put this hold on.
Yeah.
So that's part of this whole idea of there's this old, outdated part of us that's dying, right? It's falling away. But it's simultaneous to the new us, or the next version of us that's being born. So we have this thing that's it's usually linear, and we usually try to keep it linear, of let it die away and then be reborn. It's like, no, we're doing this simultaneously. And I think that's where the bipolarity comes from, right? I'm ready to do all this stuff, and God, I suck.
Right. Well, and I've gotten to the point where I just am not in the same place in my mind as I used to be, but it's gotten to where things are going by so fast that I just have to let it go. I can't focus on it all, and I can't dwell on it. And I guess what's being exercised there is just trust.
Yeah.
Is because I feel like I've had no choice but to let it just flow. And then I, at some point, required trust that it will all be okay.
Well, and essentially we did talk about that Friday night. So then we talked about, like, what we focused on was allowing ourselves to transform through this, with that continued ease and flow or whatever, and to be able to observe it without getting lost in it, because now it's like bigger than it's ever been in terms of the changing and all kind of stuff, right? And I said, it's really funny how some people say, oh, no, everything's great for me and blah, blah, blah. And then like 2 weeks later, all of a sudden I'll get a text from them, or they'll PM me like, oh my God, what happened, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, like, I shouldn't have said anything.
And I'm like, it doesn't mean it needs to be bad. It's just there's a lot of change going on, and that's what makes so many of us breathless, right? Because it's so much more than we're used to. But when we went out there, and not just the one we did online, but then when we did the Vortex, well, the thing online was really interesting. It was like, so I can't remember which one is which. First, I saw all of this kaleidoscope of color, but it looked like all these jagged edges, and we were flowing through these things with all these jagged edges. And what we needed to do was just shift it so that they were soft and bouncy and rounded, so that they weren't jagged and painful and whatever. And they all sort of started to swirl together, right? Yeah, feels good, right? To even think about that.
Yeah. It reminds me of what we did last week with the anchoring in.
Yeah.
Into the now.
Yep. And then in the process of doing that, what I saw in either the first one or the other vortexes, it was gross, but it was funny, it was like a big, monstrous, infected zit that just needed to be lanced and just, let all the pus like come out. I know it's gross to say it, but I said, the funny thing is, we always we say that, but then we get fascinated, like, ew, but we want to watch it, we're like, ew, but we want it to come out. And then we're like, ew, but I want it to come out, and it's like this watching a train wreck thing happen. And so, but it was this big, huge, and it was like, yes, it needs to be lanced. We need to let it out because it is infected. There's like stuff that it's holding us back and making us sicker because we're holding on.
Right.
So, or sicker or whatever, more in separation and all. So it was like we lanced it. So it was like this huge, it was like everything almost like blew up, like swelled up, like energetically. And then it just all like depleted because it was like getting all that crap out and cleaning it out, the equivalent of cleaning it out. So that's like, oh my God, I didn't even realize how much that sucked and felt gross. And, you know, because I was just sucking it up and I had the perception I had to just suck it up and live with it, or us collectively, right? So that felt really good. And I think that set the tone for why the rest of the weekend for me was just totally like, you know, it was like we just needed to lance that, whatever that was, right? So that was really powerful. And it sounds really, the visualization sounds really inane, but it's not. It was really powerful for everyone.
Yeah.
And it's, the energies are everywhere. Everything. It's like everything is all over the place right now. And this is that whole staying centered and focus. And, you know, and somebody asked on the share Friday night, well, what do you do if you can't, you know, what do you do if you can't even like quiet the mind, you know, to get a clear meditation? And I said, well, then you focus on quieting the mind so you can get a clear meditation. Like that becomes your priority.
Right.
However that needs to be for you.
Yeah.
And just take all your focus off all the other shit and focus on quieting the mind, because the sooner you can do that, the more you're going to be able to create and control, and, you know, not control, but stay centered, you know, and focused. I mean, God, and I do it almost every day. And I still have those moments where I feel like the whole freaking, you know, universe pulled a rug out from under me.
Oh, yeah.
Sometimes 20 times a day.
Right.
And so you brought the role thing up, you know, and the mother, it's not just the mother, it's all the roles of, because we tie identity to those roles, and it's saying, okay, it's instead, let's just be fluid to them, to say, I'm just here in this moment to do this. And then I might not be in 5 minutes, and that's okay.
Well, and if you substitute creator for mother, that encompasses every role.
Yeah, absolutely.
So if you just, I know it's that like letting it go, creating it to the point where you trust and let your creation go.
Yeah. And such an extreme level of acceptance to say, this might all change in 5 minutes, and I'm okay with that.
Right.
I could not have that role. That person might not be in my life to create that role, right? For me, like allow me to create that role for myself.
Right.
And there's always that possibility. And in that case, what would you do? And that's the whole place for us to be energetic. And energetically is to say, okay, so obviously I was holding on to that kind of mother role in some way, even though I wasn't like, so I've never been somebody who will drop everything unless I'm guided, right? And less and less lately, I've been guided to do that. But it was interesting to have to see a series of people that came to me and wanted my attention right now, which is another version of being a mother, right? No, I need you right now. I need you right now. I need you right now. And for me to observe that doesn't add value to who I am, right?
Right.
By being needed that way.
Right.
And to be able to say, okay, yeah, how about this? Because this is what comes to me. And then they come back and it ends up being, you know, not in their reality, the expectation of the role. That's okay. because it's time for me to really step into a new, like me,
Right.
like a really more expanded me. And I think that's what my higher self is pushing me to look at, is saying there are still little tiny crumbs you're holding on to, you know.
Right. Right. Oh yeah.
And you pass them up without feeling guilty or feeling like you failed or feeling like a failure, because that fed into the judgment last weekend too, you know. And it's like, and then I finally got to the place of no, it actually just leaves me the space to become who it is I feel I am. That's much bigger than that.
Right. Right.
And that's about all the words that I can put to it, because it's got so many layers. And I see all the time, all of us do this. We all say, I've got it. Yeah, I get it. I get it. I get it. And then the ego underneath, like in a very dark corner, goes, yeah, but precious, I'm holding on to precious right here. Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Don't tell them I'm here.
Precious. You know, and the precious can be the role as a mother, the role as a spouse, a wife, or a husband, or a father, or a child, or just,
or the role of being needed.
Yes, and we did talk about the martyr / savior syndrome on Friday.
Right.
And I said, what's so important for all of us to realize, because I had the question right before we got on with someone. And I said, you know, what's so important to realize is the savior martyr thing is ego. Somebody's need to be a savior or a martyr is not because you can't help it. It's because it's your ego that says, oh, because the only way I'm going to make myself valuable is to be a savior or martyr.
Right. Well, remember, I guess it was class Mount Shasta when, you know, one day it was like, what would you do if no one needed you for anything?
Exactly.
Because it certainly frees your day up.
Right. But it puts a lot of people in a panic when you say that. So what if you aren't needed by, yeah, I mean, let's ask anybody who wants to watch this, is what if you're not needed by anybody?
Right. Right.
Then what? Because, you know, a lot of us who do this work, we build our business based on need, right?
Right. Well, and you know, it kind of, the same question is, what would you be doing if you had all the money in the world?
Right.
Because we do things out of the need for money. So it's kind of the same thing. But it really, I bet a lot of people would have different answers to what are you doing and what would you be doing if you had all the money in the world, or if no one needed you to do anything for them.
Right. Because we base so much on, oh, I need to be of service to others, right? And I hear that a lot in the spiritual community. And when people say that, I'm like, you realize that's ego.
Right.
You have to be, I said, you don't have to do anything. Have to is an ego word, right? Well, I'm here.
The work you're doing is so important. It's an obligation to be to do these.
And there's the martyrdom. There's the savior. Right. There's the savior syndrome.
Well, and how can you charge for that?
Right. Well, it's my job. I still have to pay to keep the lights on.
Right.
You know? And there's nothing, yeah, and that's it. That's a balance. If there's nothing wrong to have money, that's what I tell people all the time. There's nothing wrong. Hey, I always say kudos to the people who, you know, can charge $400 for a session and people pay it, right?
Right.
And the funniest part is most of those are just like quick fix, you know, magic pill, like sessions that really don't do anything in the long term. And I'm not saying that with any judgment. That's just the reality, because that's that I need somebody else to tell me what to do. I need somebody else to tell me what's going on. I need somebody else to tell me.
Right.
And that's why, what was that?
Disempowerment.
Yeah. And it's funny. And that's what I try to explain to so many about why I don't do specific sessions that are specific, like psychic sessions or whatever, because I'm like, it's not in my interest. Okay. Right. What I do is considered psychic, right? Because we connect into the stuff that's the non-physical, but it's not telling you In fact, it's complete opposite of my whole way of working is I don't ever tell anybody they have to do anything. I always, I would share what I might see. I would share that of like when we do a session together and when we're talking about what's going on and their higher self is talking to me, like, okay, so this might be a consideration. This might be something you want to consider or look at, but I'm not sitting there going, oh, you have to do this and you have to do that. And I can't tell you how many people in the spiritual world I hear saying, oh, well, I went to so-and-so and they told me I should be doing this. And that's what I've been doing. And it's not really been working. And I don't understand why.
Right.
Because they told you that you have to, instead of you asking your own guidance.
Right.
So, and that's really what Trinity is all about, is that's what so many don't get about Trinity, is it's about getting rid of this. I mean, this is huge and it's vast, of getting rid of this basic belief in separation, that there's a better answer outside of me.
Right. Right.
And it's great for clients to get to the place of not needing me.
Absolutely.
Because then we connect at a different level altogether, which is great. But and so I think that's where I am, is like my higher self's okay. So like you can create that really good financial situation here without having to be needed in that way. Right. And the ego's going, but, right. And then it's like, because I mean, I literally last week was going through this whole thing of maybe I should just be doing something else. And then what would I be doing? And, there's all like, it's like, yeah, there's other stuff for you to be doing here in this area that you're not doing because you're still holding on to that old expectation of people needing you that way. So I guess that was my mother thing, because I don't see it as much with my kids, but I see it more with that kind of role,
Right.
So, yeah, but this is it's a big one for us. It's a real big one for us. Because it's so much easier for us to ask somebody else so that we can then blame them if it doesn't work out the way we expect it to.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right. Because if we do what we are guided and then we're like, oh, obviously my guidance was wrong. Obviously, then we start judging all that and blah, blah, blah. And it's really uncomfortable. It's like, no, there's nothing wrong. It's just maybe you just don't see the bigger picture yet. I didn't get this job. I did all this stuff and I did all this creation and I did all this and blah, 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 blah. And this is not what happened. And it's like, except you created it somehow and there's a reason, even if you don't see what the reason is, even if we want to have our temper tantrum and do that, So, there are only so many words there are so many times we can say this, but it's a really deep, dark, it is the festering zit, right? It's the festering infected thing, because it's like, I'm hiding it. I don't want anybody else to see it because I'm embarrassed of it. But at the same time, I love it too, because
I created it.
Right. And even though it doesn't serve me anymore, right, and it's actually poisoning my progress, I still want to hold on to it. That's the hidden thing that the ego is saying, oh, precious, right? Whether it's, being the parent, mother, the child, the friend, the employer, the spouse, or whatever. So I think that's maybe our focus this week, is to...
Well, and, I was just glancing over at my notes from last week, and I have empowering surrender at the last thing I wrote last week. And it's like, if you really are surrendering, you're surrendering everything. You don't go in and pick and choose.
Well, and that's what the ego wants to do, because the ego says, oh, I'm willing to give, we've talked about this on multiple weeks, right? It's like, I'm willing to give up all of this.
But just not this.
But not this.
Right. Because I created this and it's very important, and I have an affinity to this.
Right.
Whether it's positive or negative, or whether that's judgment, whether it's serving me or not.
Right. Right. Well, and it's easy and convenient. And that's what a lot of times we hold as the precious, right? we hold as our back door of avoidance, right? It's like, oh yes, I'm going to do all this, and unless this is enough. And I see this a lot, especially when we have kids that are like underage and stuff like that, because that's where many parents say, oh, but I'll just have to wait till the kids are out of the house. I can't do this now because the kids are still home.
Right.
I can't do this because of this, or my kid's too young and takes too much of my energy or space. And it's like, and that's your choice, and it's very, very, very divorced from how we are so patterned to do things in this reality, right? And this is what we're breaking. That's that precious. Because then we can say, it's convenient, oh, well, this is uncomfortable, right? At some level. Oh, so I can say, oh, well, I'd rather just spend a day doing this with my kids.
Right.
Because, that's where I get my value from. And I feel good about myself because then my kids love being with me. And then I love being with me because they love being with me, and it sounds sort of crass to say it, but it's true.
Oh yeah.
And I realized it was a really good thing for me to recognize this weekend, having my oldest getting ready to graduate college and move back home for a year before she goes to graduate school, and then the other one getting ready to go. And then there's happy and sad at the same time, right?
Right.
On both accounts. And it's like, but it's not, it's like, it's a different relationship now. Like with my oldest, it's a different relationship.
Right.
And yes, we'll have some more day-to-day interactions, but she's going to have her life and she's going to be doing what she needs to do. And I'm going to be doing what I need to do. And it's a completely different thing.
Right.
And yes, I said, you still so there's still interaction. So it's recognizing and allowing that instead of letting it be a limitation. I can't do this because of my job. I can't do this. I hear this too. Oh, I can't do this. I have too many things on my plate. Well, then that's your choice to not do this. But there's no judgment with that. And it just is to say, okay, well, it's just, instead of saying I have too much on my plate, then be honest and say, it's just not a priority to me.
Exactly.
Right now.
Right.
And that's okay. And so many, they do that and it's so funny and I laugh and it's even like coming to shares, right? And somebody say, oh, I really need community and I really would, benefit from being, I have several people who every month say they're coming next month and they never come, right?
Never come, right.
There's always an excuse. There's always something that happens. There's always something that comes up. And I'm just like, okay, I have the space here. I hold the space and you can come and all is welcome. And I do it because I like doing it and I like bringing everyone together and us doing this stuff together. So if you want to prioritize that for yourself, that's great. And if you don't, that's fine too.
Right.
But then it's so funny how many I get all these excuses and I get this and and I just have so much going on. And it's like, okay, it's just not a priority for you right now. That's okay. Oh, but it is because I need to do things better. Right. Well, but it's not, because actions speak louder than words.
Right.
Because when we really want to do something, we do it.
Exactly.
We make it a priority, we do it. And so, and I'm not, like I said, there's no judgment on that. It's just, these are these little veils that we have of self-delusion, right?
Yeah. Oh,
that we're so used to hiding behind. And for us to live in our truth 100% is for us to really own our truth 100%. And when we do that, it's looking through that veil to say, really, it's just not a priority for me right now.
Right.
And then if it's not a priority for you right now, well, then don't complain about, like when people say, well, it's not a priority for me to do my self-work. I'm like, okay, well, then don't complain about what's going on crazy in your life.
Right.
Just accept it for what it is.
Right.
And it sounds harsh, but there's no judgment in that. But it causes people to judge themselves when somebody says it to them.
Right. Well, and honestly, it sets you free once you get to that place, because you make the choice to go or not go from a whole different place.
Oh, yeah. or do or not do or whatever. Like I've had
Yeah.
people who email me about, oh, why they haven't been able to do this. And like, and I've never asked. It's just like just send me this email. And I'm just like reading it going, I'm not your keeper.
Right.
It's not my job. And you choose what you choose. So
Right.
it's what you're just saying is it's not a priority for you right now. And that's okay. And yet they'll continue. Like, and I've had that, like I've told you that there have been people, they've sent me like 3 emails and all this stuff. I'm like, because I'll just answer in like one sentence and they think I'm angry or whatever. And I'm just like, honestly, I just don't, I don't want to say I don't care. I'm okay with it.
It doesn't affect you.
Doesn't affect me. It has nothing to do with me. It's okay. Whatever.
Right.
It's your choice. My choice is mine and yours is yours. That's why we're here in separate individual bodies. That's part of the free will, like individual or anything.
Right.
So yeah, it's funny. We sort of got off into a side note, but this is really an important thing because it is maybe, because it's so funny. I was thinking, well, maybe we should just focus on lifting all those veils so that we can see the truth of ourselves and really live in that truth, because these are the little crumbs that are in our way. Right. And yet the ego goes, oh my God, that could be so scary.
Right. Right.
Really? Do you want to open up that can of worms is what I hear in the back of my head.
Are you sure you want to do that?
Are you sure? Are you sure? But there's the only way for us to really be 100% authentic in that truth is to allow ourselves to see ourselves in our 100% authenticity.
Right. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Not others, ourselves. Because when we can see ourselves, then we can see others. And it's like conversations I've had with people who are like, I get this a number of times from people. I always get the feeling you have a lot more that's like that's you're processing or that you could say, but you choose not to. And I'm like, well, because I see the whole picture so often. So I see the whole picture and it's not mine to judge.
Right.
Usually I'm just processing what I'm seeing and I'm asking inside, what is it important for me to talk or to discuss here? Like what's important for me to discuss with this individual here? So, and it's a constant self-practice on my part to stay in that clarity and guidance of what's important and what's not to discuss and bring up or whatever, versus to just perceive.
Right. Right.
Because there's no value in me telling somebody the whole story that they're denying themselves, if they're denying themselves the whole story, right?
Right.
And it's not my business to either. And yet that's a thing that as we get more intuitive and see the bigger picture, many try to do that and be like, oh, well, you're not doing this and you're not paying attention to this and da-da-da. And it's like, and most of the time that's going to have no results whatsoever.
Right. Right.
But if the guidance is, well, you might want to bring this up or just maybe bring this little piece up, this would be important. And it probably could help them see it within themselves. Okay.
Right.
So I think it's time. It feels like it's time for us to do that, to just sit in that space of sweeping away all the veils so that we can see that authenticity 100%.
Yeah.
And acceptance.
Right. And I think that's the anchoring in of this new energy into now.
Yes. Yep. In a place of love.
There are no veils.
Right. In a place of love. Yep. It's been really funny. It's been really funny because I think in January, I started this whole thing about really seeing myself, really being acceptance of myself. Like, and I literally will come out of the shower and I won't even wrap a towel around. I'll just walk buck naked and stand in front of the mirror and I walk around, like in my room and stuff,
Not parading.
Not parading, but yeah. But it, in a way that I'm looking at myself all the time. Right. And that's physical representation of me, but it also forces me, because of that, it forces me to go deeper.
Right. Right.
Because I'm not avoiding looking at anything anymore.
Right. Right.
Um, and that's really the core of all this. So whatever it is, so that we're all in that place where we can do that, in a place of love and enjoyment
Right.
and wholeness. It's almost like that next level of authenticity, because we've been
Yeah,
inching
that's what I
up.
was thinking.
Yeah, we've been inching in there. So
Yeah.
I'd say
Honesty was the word that came to me, but authentic is more appropriate.
it's both they're both really powerful words. So
Right.
and to own, because we can't own it. We can't own it. We don't own our own reality until we can be authentic with ourselves
It's
and
very
honest.
true.
Yeah. Because if we are inauthentic and are dishonest with ourselves in some way, with that little corner thing, will always have power over all of this other stuff.
Right.
Because that's what you're giving it.
Right. Right.
That's where it comes down to how I've talked about, and I've talked about this over the years, on how 100% authenticity and 100% vulnerability in that authenticity is the biggest power that we can have, because you can't take anything away from me then. Because I own it.
Right.
So whatever it is for us to get there and be that in every moment.
Yep. Be that vibration.
What?
Be that vibration.
Yeah, and it's so funny because I hear this like, what, all through the collective. It's like, but here we go. And
what did she say? Did she really say what I think she said?
Yeah. Are we really there? Are we at that? Are we? Yeah. Always, and we can do it with ease. We can do it with laughter and joy and fun and acceptance. That's what's important for us. That's the lancing. What was that?
And ease.
Yes, and that's the lancing of the pus, right? Get it out. All right, ready?
Yeah.
Let's go. That was awesome.
That felt great.
It really did. Oh my gosh, what an opening that was.
Well,
Yeah.
it was like setting down something that was so heavy that you've been carrying for so long that you just didn't even realize it.
Yeah. Oh, it was amazing.
Wow.
I saw in there, it was like in a, like, I don't know, like a sci-fi movie where you'll see a ship's door start to open, like, and they open like in that like circular way. So the door, like this thing starts to open up and this opening starts to get bigger. And it was like liquid, like water flow, like was flowing in, right? Which of course makes you like go, oh, wait. But then I saw a seal. I have to look at what the seal energy is, but the seal's like, oh, stay with me. It was really cool. And then I saw a whole bunch of other stuff, but then at the end it was like that gush had been gone, had gone, but it was like everything was just, it was like the equivalent of like taking, like just cleaning everything out. And it was just such an easy dissipation. Oh, it felt so nice. Like the beginning was a big, like you're saying, like letting go. And then there was all this stuff and all these adjustments. And then at the end, it was just like, oh yeah, every little corner, squeaky clean. It was nice.
Yeah. Yeah.
Very nice. I'm sure seal energy has something about being playful in it.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah.
If my phone would work, but I guess it's not important right now.
Right.
So I guess it's not important right now. So that was fabulous. As always, every week is like, oh my God, that was great.
Yeah.
Makes me feel like when my niece she's like 29 now, when she was like 5 years old, she was so funny at Christmas time. Like every present was like, oh my God, this is great. And then she'd throw it on the pile and then the next one would be like, oh my God. That's what I think of every week when we do this.
Yeah. How can it get better?
And then it does.
And then it does.
Seal tone meaning. All right, now it's working. Seal meaning. Just as seals can dive to incredible depths for extended periods of time, this totem calls for us to dive and explore our emotional, spiritual, and physical self, which is the authentic self, right?
Right.
Also, while also teaching us to embrace our natural sense of curiosity, creativity, and imagination. And I would probably add playing to that too. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that's the energy that it felt like. Yeah, it was good. Well, another fabulous week.
I know.
Thank you.
These are on Mondays.
Yeah, I know, right? Well, then the weeks go, wow, and then we get to Friday. It's like,
yeah,
we have to like start all over again. But it's all good. It's all good. Hold on a second. I'm trying to get my mouse to work now, which it's not. So I'm going to have to do this. All right. So everybody, glad you could join us, and we will see you next time. Have a good week.
bye.